Let's take a moment to look at gradient fills in Illustrator. So you'll notice now that I can select an object, and I have three choices for my fills. So I have my fill selected. I can choose white, I can choose none, or I can choose a gradient. Okay? So that's a quick way to bring a gradient into your object. And notice that also brings up the gradients palette. There are two different ways you can show this gradient. It goes in a linear method, which is essentially starting from one color on the left and ending at that same different color at the right. So starting with this white selector, which you can change to whatever color you'd like it to be, and ending with the black, which you can also change to whatever color you'd like it to be. Okay, so that's a quick way to just get up a fast gradient on an object. Notice you can also change this to radial. And so now, rather than going from left to right, even though it's represented the same way in the color selector, you can see that it's going from the center of white and then radiating out. And notice you also have options under radial of how this is represented. Right now, if I move this slider around, it does nothing. Well, at least it seems to do nothing. And that's because it's representing the gradient right now in the radial section as 100% round. If I made that 50%, now you can see it's elliptical. And so when I move this slider, it's actually rotating the way that gradient is shown. Let's go ahead and put that back to 0 and this back to 100%. You can also rotate the angles of your linear gradient and get some nice effects that way. Okay. Notice you do also have opacity options at the bottom, so you can select any of these and change the opacity levels. So if I were to take this object and it were on top of another object, you can see the opacity happening right there. And that's changing. Okay. Now something else to play with is there's actually a gradient tool available to you, and that's right here. And what the gradient tool does is it actually allows you to say where the start and stop happens, where the white and green square is going to take effect. So I can click white out here and end my green here. So notice the green starts there, and the white actually started outside my object. I could do it from here to here, here to here. So you can play around a lot with how much you want that gradient to affect your object and what area you would like it to affect that object. And notice it's actually changing the setting for you in this box for the angle as you're doing that. You can, when you're working with gradients, let's put a radial gradient on this guy. Seems to make sense for a round object. So how would that tool help you? Let's say I'm trying to make sort of a 3D appearing sphere. Well, I could put my center at the top rather than at the bottom, and so it starts to be highlighted from the top down. And then I can begin to do things like draw an ellipse underneath this sphere that is filled with a single color object, such as black, and put that in the background. I'm hitting Command and my left bracket, Command Shift left bracket, Command Shift left bracket will put it all the way back to the background. And just so you can see what that's doing, to give you an illustration of that, you can see that this layer right now is here. Command right bracket now will bring it up automatically, left bracket down. Command Shift with those brackets brings it automatically to the top and bottom of this individual layer. Okay, so it's starting to look like more of a 3D sphere, right? If I were to turn off the stroke completely, it's even more of a 3D look. And then I could go in and even work with my gradient further to give a core shadow. So if you spend some time looking at objects when they're lit, you do get sort of an extra shadow. So I can click right here, just underneath the box, and it'll give me another gradient slider so that I could go a little closer to white, make it a little lighter, Maybe it's a tinge blue, so it looks like reflected light coming up off of that. Okay, and what if I were to even change my shadow to be sort of a grayish blue color? And this is where you might want to change the way you're choosing color to something like hue, saturation, and brightness. So I can make the brightness wherever I want, take down the saturation of that, and start to change the hue. So you have many different options. Turn off the stroke. So using gradient, you can start to get some nice sort of three-dimensional looking effects. You can add as many colors as you would like. So I'm just playing around now with, I'm going to randomly choose some colors from the swatch menu, double click that, let's get another one. I seem to like green a lot today. Why you would ever want to use this color combination is beyond me, but that is the world's ugliest rainbow. There you go. So you can use this, play around with your gradient tool, and do all sorts of interesting combinations by dragging and scaling that object. So take some time to play around with gradients. I think you'll find they're very useful, especially for your first core exercise.